Day. It is April the 30th, the last day of the month, folks. A lot of window dressing going on right now. Well, not really.
Mildred!
It is Mildred
I can't even find my car. I don't even know where I have a coffee. I have no idea where it is.
I've got mine in my
light's
Bim
not
Bam
even
cup from
on.
Oxford, Mississippi. And look, we got a great lineup today. Jordan Davis Hill. Love this guy. He is literally works for the right company.
I know he's been in the green room. He's been in the green room. Sorry, we're late.
Yeah, 24/7 sports covering Georgia. Also, we will have Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, checking in from Oxford. You'll catch him on Monday nights at 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis. And Rodney Orr, Tider Insider. Look, 3 things. Allow notifications on your iPhone and Android. Smash subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll get all the YouTube videos we do, the live shows that we do, everything that we do, and SECU. And great stuff to talk about today, man. Paul Finebaum spoke last night at the Touchdown Club of Memphis, about a 3.5-hour meeting. That was unbelievable. We're going to talk college football if that's what you like. Right after this, get ready. Get pen and paper handy.
To help me smash the subscribe button at the bottom of the right or left of your screen where you see the little YouTube icon. Hit that. We can continue to bring this content to you for free. It helps out our show, so make sure you do that. If you're on YouTube and then Facebook, hit the like button. It really makes a difference. Rob, get your pen and paper handy. And the last thing, if you've seen my coffee, Mildred or anybody, let me know. We'll be right back.
All right.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports covers Georgia. Jordan, let's talk right now about the draft. The previous 2 drafts, Georgia's had 25 players taken. What was the total haul this time? I do know that the SEC, if you count Oklahoma and Texas, and you got to, they're family now. I mean, they're here. That was 8 SEC schools had players selected in the first round. But let's focus specifically on the Junkyard Dogs.
Yeah, Georgia had 8 players drafted. It's one of those classes. We were actually talking about this with some of the other beat writers before the draft. I think this class is sort of a product of when you have other guys leave early, like they have the last few years. But, still a really strong class. I think they were tied for the 6th most from one school. I think Michigan led the way with 13. But, Georgia had 8 and sat down yesterday and went ahead and looked at 2025. I think Georgia's got another shot to hit double digits. They're going to have a very strong class and really starts with 3 guys, Carson Beck, Malachi Starks, Michael Williams. Carson, depending on who exactly needs a quarterback, he may be one of the first guys taken by the time we get to next year's draft. But, 8 guys. I had 2 go in the first round, Brock Bowers and Marius Mims. I'd say that was another successful class for Georgia. And really interested to see how those guys translate to the NFL and what they're able to do as rookies.
Yeah, so that's 30. That's 33 in the last 3 seasons. Unbelievable numbers. And all right, so Carson Beck, you watched him coming out of Jacksonville. He was a high 4, maybe a 5-star quarterback. This will be his, I believe, 4th year in the program at Georgia, and that automatically qualifies you as the fans love you just because you've stayed there. I think so. What's his ceiling? You know football, you know it really well.
I mean, I think he can be a Heisman candidate. I think he can be a successful NFL quarterback. I think the biggest thing that we'll be watching for from him this year is improvement on the deep ball. I think that's his biggest weakness. And I think some people were a little disappointed at G-Day. He missed on a few opportunities for some deep shots. But no, I was really impressed last year because, as you know, he was a junior, but that was the first time he was starting. So I sort of figured these first few games, even though competition wasn't all that fierce, you might see him kind of struggle. And there really wasn't a ton of that. I thought the first game you could kind of see nerves, and other than that, he looked fine. So the biggest thing for me with Carson is just let's see if he takes some more of those deep shots and if he's able to hit on them. But even if he doesn't, I mean, he just did a very good job last year. I think he might have ended up with 5 or 6 interceptions. He did a very good job of keeping Georgia out of bad situations, not forcing the football, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, too, in the draft, there were 0 running backs, safeties, or linebackers taken in the first round. Last year, the Falcons took Bijan Robinson out of Texas, I think at number 9. But this isn't a new trend. When Trent Richardson from Alabama was picked 4th in the April of 2012 draft, and he had a good career, not a great career with the Colts. Everybody, you look at him, you're like, physically, he's the most impressive-looking athlete at running back you've probably seen since Bo or Herschel. I mean, that kind of out of Escambia down in Pensacola. I kind of guess it's a sign of the times when you can't rattle off 3 or 4 or 5-star running backs on that Georgia roster, but they all, Kendall Milton, my friend Mark Ham's son has been out there working in Dallas at that training thing. He said that guy's a really cool guy. Of course, Will's a senior going to graduate from Tennessee in about 10 days, but let's talk about the running back room at Georgia. Etienne's there.
I think it's going to be running back by committee. I mean, Trevor Etienne will be leading the way. I think that he didn't touch the ball a ton at G-Day in that spring game, but thought he looked really impressive. He broke about a 19-yard run right up the middle, and really fascinated. They lost Andrew Paul, which I was sort of surprised. Thought he may stick around, knowing that he may get a decent bit of carries, but he's in the portal. I've heard Michigan State, Oregon. Haven't seen anything yet on where he's going to go. But Roderick Robinson, who's going to be a redshirt freshman, looked really good this spring, and he's like 240. Okay. You mentioned Kendall Milton. He told us last spring, he told Roderick, you need to make sure you don't add any more weight. They may move you to fullback if you keep putting on weight. But, I mean, the dude is just powerful. Very, very impressive. And they got a few other guys. They got 3 freshmen coming in. And my big question mark is Branson Robinson, guy that got hurt in fall camp last year, still working his way back. Didn't play at G-Day, but he did suit up, kind of went through warm-up. So I thought if Branson wouldn't have gotten hurt last year, he could have been their lead running back, could have been their leading rusher. So they still got a lot of options. I think Trevor Etienne's going to be leading the way, but you're going to see 3 or 4 different running backs touch the ball, and probably touch the ball quite a bit this fall.
What are the odds anyone now has a running back stick around long enough to become the all-time leading rusher at a place like Georgia or Auburn or Alabama? I mean, remember those days? It was like, wow, he's going to break Herschel's record. And Herschel did it in just 3 years. Signed with the USFL, the New Jersey Generals, and then had buyer's remorse, but they wouldn't let him come back. God only knows what would have happened with a 4th year of Herschel.
For sure, and that's the funny thing, too. When I think about a running back and you think about running backs like Herschel, like Bo Jackson, it's like, just give me the ball. Just let me go to work.
Yeah.
And now, and I understand this mindset of these running backs, they're perfectly fine with having, sharing the backfield, because then you go to the NFL and we already know that position has been devalued so much by the league. But you can say, look, I got a lot of tread left on my tires. They did not run me into the ground. And, I think it's one of those things where I'm really interested just to see these next few years, just the running back, especially in this league and with Oklahoma and Texas coming in, what do their draft stocks look like? Because like you just said, Rob, there wasn't, a running back taken in that first round. What are they able to do, and what is sort of the modern era of college football? And are we still saying 2nd and 3rd rounds about as good as you can do? Because Bijan was good, but I don't know if y'all noticed, I'm a Falcons fan. They did not do a whole lot of winning with Bijan, and I really like him, but I think that's only going to emphasize, like, hey, There's no reason to pick a running back high. We can get value elsewhere to start this draft.
Well, and it's strange. Like Ben Troop was on with us yesterday morning, and he said the magic number is 3 seasons and 4 games. So into your 4th season to qualify for the pension at age 55. So that's interesting. And the running backs, it's by committee now. I mean, you've got to have 4 or 5. And again, at the start of the 21 season, maybe 22, I believe Georgia had 13 running backs on the depth chart. And that's a lot to have. But they make great defensive backs. A running back is a physical guy, but the game's changed. Switching to wide receiver, Ladin Mack is one of the more underrated players, I think, to ever play at Georgia. And I think he's going to have a really good career in the NFL.
Yeah, I talked about this on Sunday. To me, of the 8 Georgia players that were drafted, I thought he had the best fit. Going to the Chargers, they lost Keenan Allen, they lost Mike Williams. I mean, other than probably Josh Palmer, Ladin Mack's probably got to be the favorite to be the leading receiver. And, Jim Harbaugh, he was at Michigan when he played against Georgia and Ladin Mack in that Orange Bowl a few years ago.
Yeah.
Lad didn't have really a big game. I think he had a couple of receptions, but
Yeah.
Georgia won by like 23. So
Yeah.
I love that fit. The biggest thing to me with Ladin, I don't think this is any secret, is he just got to stay healthy. He had a back issue last year that cost him the first 4 games, had a knee injury the year before that kind of had him in and out of the lineup for a little bit. But no, I mean, Lad's really underrated. I think it's funny. He came at a time when, Brock Bowers is going to be the guy that I think a lot of people remember. But Lad made a lot of plays, and I just always loved watching his ability to change direction like on a dime. And he was able to juke guys out. I think about 2 years ago, that big game in Athens against Tennessee, he gets a cornerback to bite, and Stetson Bennett hits him for a touchdown. And that was sort of the start of Georgia taking that game over. So, yeah, I'm really excited about what Lad's capable of doing with the Chargers. I think he's got a great coach with Jim Harbaugh, and I think he's got a chance to be very, very productive as a Charger.
Yeah, you think about the running back Blake Corum that Harbaugh had at Michigan. It wasn't a big guy, but I think Jim Harbaugh is one of the best coaches we've ever seen. I know people don't like him, but if you don't think every coach out there is doing everything humanly possible to gain an advantage over their opponent, and they love to pick on Belichick, Nick Saban, and Harbaugh. Well, let's just think about it. All those guys win a lot, and I think Ryan Day's the happiest guy in the Big Ten. And what they spend $30 million on this recruiting, some unbelievable. Paul Finebaum threw out a $30 million figure last night at the Touchdown Club in Memphis. And it is kind of silly thinking about that, isn't it, Jordan? I mean, I'm a capitalist, but $30 million, God.
It sort of feels like we're getting near the point where we need to just publish all these numbers until we know what the salary cap is. So we can say, well, they got room for maybe another corner, but, they might not, you know what I mean? But it's just sort of the way of the world and the way it's set up now with NIL. But with Harbaugh, I mean, I've always really liked him. I think back, and I shared this when he, the other day, because he drafted Hank Aaron's great nephew, the running back from Troy. And when Harbaugh had just really gotten going at Michigan, they were doing satellite camps.
Yeah.
And he came down, and Hank Aaron was there. He met with Hank Aaron and Andrew Young, the former mayor of Atlanta.
Yeah.
But like Harbaugh goes to the satellite camp, and he's wearing a Hank Aaron jersey, just hanging out, just watching all these recruits. It's just one of the coolest things I've covered, because that was like, the spotlight on the satellite camps, and this is going to be the end of. That lasted like 2 years, but I've always liked Harbaugh, and I think he's very honest. I don't know that anyone attacks life with the kind of enthusiasm. What is it? An enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Yeah.
I think Jim Harbaugh is genuine when he says things like that.
Yeah, and I know he takes his team to watch movies the night before games, like We Were Soldiers, the great one with Mel Gibson, that have a deeper meaning. I know he's a very, very strong Catholic, as his brother is. The whole family is, and being a Scotch-Irish, Episcopalian, convert Catholic now, I love it. But 3 things about Harbaugh kind of funny. The birth control glasses, you got to love those. He tucks in his sweatshirt, but the best part is the white socks. It's a great look. The guy's a genius. He won at the University of San Diego. He won at Stanford, and he revived Michigan. Michigan now, talent-wise, I'd say he's one of the top in the country. Back to Georgia, defensive linemen. That's another thing. Y'all have just turned out a ton of them, and not all of them have come in as 5 stars. I think about Jordan Davis out of Charlotte was a high 2, 3-star, big basketball guy, 6'7", 340. You got anybody like that on the roster that you saw in the spring from what access you had?
They're going to need somebody. I'll say that. The biggest thing to me is just trying to figure out which one of these guys is going to break through. I mean, I think a great candidate is Christian Miller, who announced he was going in the portal. Then about a day later, it's like, oh, no, actually, I'm going to stay put. And I think that's in his best interest because I think he's got a chance to really contribute, kind of playing that nose tackle, defensive tackle, a guy out of Cedar Grove, which, funny enough, Cedar Grove was where that satellite camp was I was just talking about with Jim Harbaugh. But, yeah, they're going to need some guys to step up. I mean, they got a huge boost in Nazir Stackhouse coming back. He's the guy, if y'all remember that Georgia-Missouri game, he picked off Brady Cook and nearly took it back for a touchdown, big nose tackle that made a big play. But, yeah, it's one of those things where I thought they might go in the portal after the spring window and try to add somebody. Just based on what I've heard and what I've seen at this point, I don't think they're going to. But they need a guy like Christian Miller, Jordan Hall, a guy from down in Jacksonville that they got. They're going to need someone to break out and step up because I think that they just got to take a step forward with the defensive line. If you look at that team last year, I don't think they quite created the amount of havoc they wanted. And I say that understanding they still won 12 games. It wasn't like, it was a bad season, but just need some guys to step up. I think they've got guys capable, but I think we'll get a better feel for who that's going to be once we get into the season.
All right. I know we got a couple of minutes before you got to go. You always have a busy schedule. How many, you're on shows all over Georgia, all around the country. You do, but you put out a lot of great work on Twix. That's my new name for Twitter. They don't call it X, Twitter. I call it Twix, like a candy bar. But it's a constant feed that you're putting out. Throw out a name or two that Georgia fans, college football fans have never maybe even thought about that you think is going to jump on the scene this year, have a really big year for Georgia, offense, defense, or special teams.
Well, looking outside of the fans that probably follow Georgia, 24/7, I think Dylan Bell, wide receiver, is going to have a big year. He's a guy that played a little bit of running back because they had to last year when they had some guys banged up, but he's a wide receiver through and through. He gets a lot of Deebo Samuel comparisons. I think a big part of that is because he has played running back, but he was super impressive down the stretch of last season, had a big game against Tennessee, had a couple different contested catches in that Orange Bowl against Florida State. I think he's going to be one of Georgia's leading receivers, and I think he's going to be a guy, again, talking about 2025, I think he could wind up going to the NFL and having, pretty good draft stock because of his size. He's like 6'1", 215. I think he's got a chance to have a really good season. On the defensive side, I'll probably point to Jonell Aguero, who I think is going to be the guy that is going to replace Tyke Smith at star. He was a guy out of Massachusetts that they signed a couple of years ago. They were really excited about him. He was seen as a safety prospect, but they brought him in. They understood Tyke was probably going to leave after last season. So, hey, you back up Tyke at star. That's sort of that nickel position in Georgia's defense. Learn from him, sort of figure it out. He's a really physical guy. I think he's ready to start there at star. He's just going to be a sophomore. But I think he's going to be a name a lot of people know by the end of the season.
Well, and that's the thing. They'll miss Will Muschamp because he's going to be following his son up at Vanderbilt. He's so – I love people that coach with that kind of passion. I mean, maybe not a great head coach, but as a coordinator, as a recruiter, as a motivator, everywhere he goes, he develops a hell of a lot of fans. But you've got still Kirby Smart there, Glenn Schumann. So there's still us. Who's a new coach? Anybody new that they've brought in to look at defense? Because having all those eyes on there has really paid off.
I would be remiss not to mention Travaris Robinson, T-Rob, former Auburn.
Know
guy.
about him? Yeah.
I think that was a huge hire, and I thought that was really savvy by Georgia because I get the sense that Kirby kind of knew Will was ready to take a step back. the head coaching change happens at Alabama. Nick Saban retires, and Kirby says, "All right, let's go get T-Rob." And Alabama tried really, really, really hard to convince him to come back once Kalen DeBoer got hired and he was putting his staff together. Huge win for Georgia, and I think that's going to pay major dividends recruiting in Florida and specifically in Miami.
Yeah. Hey, Jordan Davis Hill, love having you on here. Look forward to doing it every week with you. Learn a lot. I always go back and watch these shows, and I start taking notes from what you say because it's real time. But how can people keep up with all the great work you do?
Definitely. Dogs247.com on Twix. I guess I'll start calling it that now, Rob. At Jordan Davis Hill, at Dogs247. And yeah, spring ball's done, but there's still a lot of stuff going on, a lot of content coming out of the draft and looking at some of the guys that Georgia has coming in. Definitely still a very busy time of year. And it's funny. We're going to be doing this and putting our nose to the grindstone. Then spring meetings will be here in about a month, and then maybe a month and a half after that, we'll be in Dallas for the SEC Media Days.
116 days away from the start of college football season. John Stemler reminded us of that last night in the invocation before the meeting started. 7 hours, 12 minutes, and 7 seconds, if anybody's keeping track. All right. Have a great week, man. Thank you so much.
See you guys.
All right. Brendan,
do you want to go to this Paul Finebaum interview?
Let's do. I want to say this. Say real quick. Got a chance to talk to Paul Finebaum last night at the Touchdown Club of Memphis. Just so you'll know, they're doing a series. It's called the Spring Speaker Series. Paul Finebaum came last night. Of course, he went to Christian Brothers High School, my alma mater in White Station, Tennessee grad. Came in last night and spoke. It was an awesome meeting. Next Monday, Houston Nutt will be there. The following week, Greg McElroy, and then June 10th, Cole Kubelik. But got a chance to talk to Paul Finebaum. Ask him a few questions about what's happening in college football, and he had some good answers. Paul, your thoughts about private equity getting involved in the college football playoff with what Derek Dooley said. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that's just part of it, but I think ultimately private equity will be all over college football because it's, private equity goes where you can make money, and there's a lot of money to be made. I've talked to people that really believe the sport is vastly undervalued.
Another one, ESPN. Paul, your thoughts about private equity getting involved in the college football playoff with what Derek Dooley said. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that's just part of it, but I think ultimately private equity will be all over college football because it's, private equity goes where you can make money, and there's a lot of money to be made. I've talked to people that really believe the sport is vastly undervalued.
Another one, ESPN's taking that spot, iconic spot that CBS had. Who are the announcers going to be, and how much different do you expect it to be? What's your role going to be?
Well, I think the announcers are going to be the same. I mean, you still have the Fowler, Herb Street crew will do not always the prime game. My job's not going to really be any different. We'll still do the SEC morning show. But it's just from a day-to-day standpoint, it will be different to Texas and Oklahoma. And on July 1st, when it becomes official, we'll be out in Austin one day and Norman the next.
What are your thoughts, too, about Oklahoma and Texas coming in? Is it true there's going to be a billboard on I-20 that's all orange and white? Texas, in the bottom right-hand corner, welcomes the SEC.
Yeah,
it's going to be that wild.
Having been to both places recently, there's tremendous excitement. I think it's one of the most exciting things that's ever happened to the SEC.
And as far as the rest of the league right now, the Ole Miss factor, they have not been the hunted before. They've always been hunting. Kind of talk about that. Lane Kiffin was the one coach who really challenged Nick Saban to change, and he wanted to beat him so badly. I think people are going to miss Nick Saban more than they realize. A lot of people may want him back.
Yeah, no, listen, he's obviously the most important coach in the league since Bear Bryant, and maybe the greatest coach of all time. So I don't say that really with much doubt. But yeah, he will, and he left at a high standard. It's not like the guy had 4 losing seasons. He almost made it to the national championship game.
One last one. As far as the SEC and the Big Ten at 65, do you see that happening soon? That we go to just 4 super conferences?
Yeah, we're definitely moving towards super conferences. But I mean, I think the real place to keep your eye on is the ACC. Can it hold together? If it can't, it will happen a lot sooner than we think.
Boss of the Vitamin Shop, 2 locations, Olive Branch and Oxford, Mississippi. Proud to have him as a sponsor of SEC Sidelines, Sports Network, and SECU. Justin, tell us about your stores and why somebody wants to come there.
Rob, thanks for having me. Look, really 3 reasons, I think, why people should come to the Vitamin Shop. One is products. We've got more products than anyone. You're talking vitamins, you're talking sports nutrition, you're talking energy drinks, snack bars, all of that. We've got as much product as anyone in the business. 2, prices. We got the best prices, and we will price match, Rob. If you go to Walmart, you go to Amazon.com, you go to Target and find it, we match. Why not shop local, shop with us? And then finally, our health enthusiasts. The people that work in our store know more about vitamins and supplements than anyone I know. If you come in with any problem, they will help you to find a vitamin or a supplement or any product that will help you for that problem.
Yeah, I shop there. My wife does. We love it. I think the employees make the difference there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Super helpful. And the knowledge is just unbelievable. Knowledge of the products, knowledge of the human body, fitness, wellness, all that.
Yeah. Look, you get 1 trip to the plate, make it count, take care of yourself. Shop at the Vitamin Shop, Olive Branch in Oxford, Mississippi. Proud to have them as a sponsor of Sidelines.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. Paul Finebaum, interesting comments last night. And great talk, huge crowd last night out at the Hilton. And hearing what he said, and he made a lot of sense. But I do believe private equity.
By the way, Rob, and by the way, sorry about the video orientation on the camera. It was shot this way, and I was trying to make it that way, and it kind of made last sentence. But the audio sounded really good to hear him what he was saying, and it was a really good get. So what we're going to do is I'm going to post that interview in its entirety by itself on Facebook and YouTube, so people can check it out separately, and then you'll just see it. I'll put it up, and then we'll post it, and everyone could go check it out if you missed the interview.
We'll give back Paul more of his head. I did shoot there. I was looking.
No. I was just going to say the camera work was great. It was, but this show is shot is 16:9, and that's a 9:16. So
gotcha.
So it's like everything stretches to fit. We got Yancey Porter too.
Yeah, Yancey. I used to shoot a lot of my own stuff, and the best thing I ever learned was understand what your photographers are doing out there, because man, they can make it happen, and that was great stuff. Great job. Yancey Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch him Monday nights, 6 p.m., Sports 56, WHBQ in Memphis and 98.5 FM, and all over Super Talk, Mississippi, covering the Ole Miss Rebels. Yancey, we were at the Touchdown Club in Memphis Spring Speaker Series. Paul Finebaum really likes Ole Miss. He says, this ain't your grandfather's, Ole Miss. This is a team that, they won 11 games last year, the most in school history. And he said, it's going to be a lot of fun. And he said, Lane Kiffin wanted to beat Nick Saban so badly every time they played. He goes, the week of the game, you'd think, okay, they're going to do it. But now he didn't even have to play him this year. But Ole Miss now has just got to handle, as we talked about before, being the hunted, not just the hunter. But I would think that if I'm an Ole Miss player, I'm loving the position and having the spotlight on me, because that's what you train for, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The clarity be much more after today. Today's the last day of the spring portal, the last day of all the portals before the season starts. So all the football teams across the country are going to know at least, who's leaving and who's staying on their roster. But they don't expect any Quinshon Judkins type players to be leaving the team.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But I mean, it's we've talked about it before. This is on paper the best, the deepest, the most talented roster since the Johnny Ball era.
Well, the defensive line, I love the fact. I remember a couple of years ago you talked about that rotation Ole Miss had of 12. Man, when you can go 2 and 3 deep on the front 7, you can start making hotel reservations for Atlanta. Last year, Ole Miss wins 11 games, but Alabama still went to Atlanta. What's different? What's the feeling right now with the defense? What they have personnel-wise that you think gets them to Atlanta?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing right now going for them is they don't play at Alabama and at Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah, that helps.
I mean, that's harder than winning a national championship in the playoffs. So, the schedule is much friendlier. They've got one more year experience. Jackson Dart is, he's going to his third year into Lane's system now. They returned 4 of their 5 starters on the offensive line. They brought in 4 starters from other teams, including 2 from Washington, who played the national championship and was voted, the number 1 offensive line in the country.
Yeah.
That was a really a goal of theirs was to get much deeper on the offensive line, and they felt like they've done that. And surprisingly, nobody's transferred on that offensive line. So you've got 9 guys that started on Power 5 programs on that roster right now on that offensive line, and and that's part of the kind of the koi game that Lane is playing. With the spring practice and spring drills that you don't really line up in first string, second string. You don't even wear pads to have practices. So everybody feels like they have a fair chance comes fall ball. So they feel really good on the line of scrimmage on both sides. Feel really good about the quarterback. Feel better that they have during any point at linebacker. They still would like another corner. They would like to get one more pure rush in, and I think that's about it. The rest is just kind of gravy. They've got 4 running backs they feel like they could, win with right now. There will be no Quinshon Judkins. Obviously, there's only one of those in the country,
Yeah.
so they'll do a running back by committee. So I would say they'll be a little weaker at running back because of that. A lot of people still like to say, well, they're going to still run, they're going to go back to the 3-headed monster they did before Quinshon, and the offensive line's going to be better. And, that it's not going to be a big deal. It might not be a big deal, but, they're going to be a little weaker right about there without Quinshon. And that really everywhere else, I think they'll be a little stronger everywhere, and probably a good bit stronger there on the offensive line and linebacker.
Well, it's not a lot different than the old days of the wishbone. I mean, you look at some of the great tailbacks that played back in the wishbone era. You remember Bo Jackson? I mean, in 82 and 83 and 84, 84, he didn't play the whole season because he was injured. But in 83, of those 3 years in the wishbone, counting that 84 year, his best year was 1,218 yards, but he shared the spotlight in 83 with Lionel Little Train James, rest his soul, and Tommy Agee out of Maplesville, Alabama. Salute to the great pulpwood country. But we've seen this before, the running back by committee. So but give me your pick for the top running back who's healthy at Ole Miss going into the season.
Bentley. I mean,
Yeah.
Bentley still.
Ulysses Bentley, the 4th. Yeah, 5th and 6th.
Yeah. He's only going into his 10th year of college.
Yes, that's correct.
Literally, I think he's going to be 24 this season.
And he's got 2 more years, which is so weird,
24 in the NFL, you're almost done.
Yeah,
it's going to be a new sitcom. It's like I'm 40 and still got 2 years of eligibility because of COVID.
I'm 40 and I'm a sophomore and I'm on the lawn at the fraternity house getting liquored up.
It's like it's like what was the movie?
Old
School.
Ole Miss had a defensive end last year that turned 27. He finally graduated UQA. So he's with the
27.
27. Yeah.
I mean, how old was
he
Tommy Boy?
He played a year, and then he was out for 3 years with a leg injury, and then he came back.
Well, you think about it. That's Tommy Boy was in college for 7 years. In the great movie, he goes.
I mean, yeah.
That's 1 more year he would have been a doctor. 4 years undergrad, 4 years medical school. But I don't think Tommy Boy was a pre-med major. By the way, Chris Farley, one hell of an athlete. He did all those stunts in the movie himself. Yeah, fat guy in a little coat. No one will ever live that one down. All right, for y'all, I think Brendan and Yancey. Here's something interesting. We're talking again. Only positive thoughts on this show. We attack problems. We offer solutions. Okay, I will say this, guys. The interest. I can't imagine what it's like in the ticket office at Ole Miss right now, Yancey, of demand for tickets, people wanting to be, in the vault, which is just, I love that stadium. I was down there. I've been down to Ole Miss twice the last couple of months, but talk about the loyalty foundation at Ole Miss and what all's happening on the ticket demand.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's really excited for opening season against Furman. And then you get to play Georgia Southern, and then a big whopper against Middle Tennessee State. So I think everybody's just really thrilled.
Wow. Real hard.
Well, but you got
real
Georgia
hard
coming.
balls.
I mean, come on, Yancey.
Wow.
Jumping for joy here.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's really a shame.
Or it's the pressure stack that you don't, poop the proverbial bet on like the first three and like lose an easy one, because there's
that ain't happening.
They could literally play their fourth string and win those games at halftime.
Yeah,
I know.
It's Ole Miss traditionally plays a national top 10 type program the very opening weekend, usually at a neutral site. They don't have that this year. And then they have a really big non-conference game at home, the very, first or second home game, and they don't have that this year. So, I mean, it's everybody's really excited about the season, but let's just say that the month of September is a snoozer if I've ever seen one. So it's just kind of like, walk in the game, get you a toddy, say to everybody, and I'll see you back in the Grove in 10 minutes.
Well, think about this, though. Going to a college football game, I call it the Grove effect, because Ole Miss really did it. They made tailgating like a wedding event. It's so big. And you got 60,000 in the stadium now, and you might have 40 outside the stadium, or 50,000. And, you look at the condominiums and the houses and Oxford's, I mean, it's like these college towns that people want to go back, the Ponce de Leon, the Fountain of Youth. I don't think it matters. I think the fans are going to see Ole Miss play. They just want to see the Rebels. It never matters.
67 in the stadium and about 70, 75 in the Grove, especially for that first month.
All over campus.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of wild. But then, once we start warming up, we get into October a little bit. The first real home game of the season is not until Oklahoma plays at Oxford. They got Kentucky, and that'll be semi-exciting there. But Oklahoma is when it really kind of starts, and that's the week of Halloween. But they do play Kentucky. Now they play a couple road games there that could be places like South Carolina, which I don't know if you remember, they were preseason number 4 Houston Nutt era, and Nutt forgot that Decimal Cluster was a running back and put him at receiver, and they got down like 24 points at halftime, and then they put him at running back the second half, and he ran for like 200 yards in the second half, and they fumbled the ball on like South Carolina's 4-yard line and got beat. And South Carolina stormed the field, and so there's a lot of stumbling blocks. You got to play at Florida. You got to play Georgia at home. There's places that, but it's a different. There's no Alabama, there's no Auburn, so everything just kind of feels different. It doesn't feel right, but the team is so good. The expectations are so high. And everything for Ole Miss is national championship or bust, and the playoffs is what everything matters. So it's not really have been a big talking point, but if the expectations weren't so high, I think that the the feeling would be a little disappointing. You know, you're playing Furman, you're playing Middle
Yeah.
Tennessee State, you're playing Georgia Southern, you're not playing Alabama, you're not playing Auburn. So the schedule wise is kind of icky a little bit, but you know, now you can go to 17 games in the playoffs and you'll get all you want and some at the end of the year.
Yeah. You had a game against Florida. That's in the swamp.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that one.
And
Yeah.
and you know he'll be fighting for his life, and you know that there'll be a big buzz that, you know, will they come after Lane Kiffin if they do make a coaching change? And we know Lane Kiffin loves the ocean and the water, and although it is inland there in Gainesville, and there'll be a national buzz about that, I'm sure as well. So there'll be a lot.
Don't calm down. It's only 90 miles away from either coast. By the way,
Well, he's got free
and when you
access
have
to
a
jet.
hurricane, this is where you want to be here in Central Florida because you're safe, Lane. Lane, are you listening, Lane?
You already
Lane,
got the
can you hear me?
pitch.
You're safe here, Lane. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Stay in your lane.
I
Stay
promise.
in your lane, Lane.
Come down anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime. You just want to
So
talk?
there will be more Florida fans in Mississippi than in Florida this year. I can assure you that. So everybody's going to be pulling for the Gators around here in Mississippi. It's being talked about a lot on the message boards already. Trust me.
Well, you know what?
That's
We
brilliant.
talked about it last night. The
We're
Grove
touched,
Collective, man, how much money that they've
Yeah.
raised. And there was a great, I guess it says a lot about the duality of man in the fact that you were going to do a $350 million facelift of the Vaught
Yeah.
Hemingway Stadium, and they shifted
Put it on
that,
hold.
put it on
Yeah.
hold. Let's invest in NIL. Your collective, am I correct, is over 11,000 members. I call that the Green Bay Packers populist model.
Yeah, I mean it's they got lucky to have someone like Walker Jones that has so much experience
Yeah.
with
Wow.
Under Armour, and they were on the cutting edge, and that's really allowed both Lane and Chris Beard to recruit at a national level like they are in the portal. And you know, it takes a lot of money to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
Ole Miss has been on the forefront. Then, you know, obviously Mississippi passed the state laws now where the colleges, the universities can directly pay the collectives, and
Yeah.
so that changes the whole game. And you know,
That
once that
changes
happened,
everything.
yeah, and you know, within a year, every state will have that passed, and then it really will not have to be by the masses because there will no longer be collectives. The universities will take them over, and they'll just dish the money out accordingly with their personnel there. So things are going to change.
That's
But
when
as
it
we
gets
saw,
really dirty. That's when the good
yeah,
stuff
that's
happens.
when it gets really dirty. That's when, you know, when the university
big
can start
boys.
paying them. But now, you know, we saw UAB last night. They just 10 players unionized to start their thing where
There it comes. Yep.
here it comes. So now we're going to get, it's just around the corner. The NCAA released something that they're working around the clock where they can become employees and they can start sharing revenue, this was all supposed to happen from the beginning. It was not supposed to be a bunch of fans, you know, passing around the hat to pay players. That was not the idea of the NIL, you know. So we're about to see massive changes in a hurry. It's going to become revenue sharing, and then it'll go back to the old school way where you'll have a cap on what the NIL is going to be. And then they'll be passing money again around in the hat to get an edge on the opponents and pay them cash under the table. So it will go all the way back to old school way once again shortly.
Yeah, and then franchise tags, right, Rob? I mean, isn't that around the corner? Salary caps, franchise tags. What do we got?
Here's what I think's going to happen.
I've seen this movie.
We've all been saying this was coming. So here's what'll happen. The players, okay, it's like embedded capital gains when you buy into a fund, a mutual fund or something, and you buy in November or December, and then around Christmas they do capital gains distribution. You're like, wow, I wasn't even in that fund, but for a month, and I'm having to pay the whole year. Universities have been here for hundreds of years. Here's what's going to happen. I predicted it before anybody else said it about private equity getting involved. I've been saying it for a long time because people will say, just like people that make construction loans, if I can get 10% and the bank's paying me 2.5%, I'm doing construction loans. Here's what'll happen. Some smart fans, and there's some smart ones out there, fans own college football, are going to put together a deal. This is what we're going to do. The players say they want revenue sharing. By God, the fans are going to want revenue sharing in the form of a dividend. I'm a season ticket holder. I'm a priority season ticket holder. I'm given to that collective. The team does well, you return a dividend, okay? They do better, you raise the dividend, okay? You watch. That's what's going to happen. If the fans fight back like that, we can keep this stuff in check. Otherwise, you are absolutely a fool. You're going to have activist investors get involved in college football. You watch. I'm telling you, the terms of endearment in the bedroom and in the business world follow the money trail. Blood's thicker than water, but money's thicker than blood.
Yancey, don't you think maybe that's a good point, Rob? But like we just reiterate or just said, and now I'm reiterating, the universities get involved. It tends to, they do a good job at throwing up the walls and, making all this stuff hey, like the Vatican, it's like, once they get in, you ain't getting these guys, you're coming in here. So that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, and instead of being 3 employees at the Grove Collective or whatever collective your school has, when the universities get involved, there'll be 50. They'll eat up 70% of the budget just with employees, and you don't ever want bureaucracy like that. The government, universities, but they want they want control of everything to begin with, right? But they want control because they're competing with their athletic fundraiser, right? They don't like that they've got to put it on hold, so another group can go and ask the same alumni for money for their cause, right? So it's competition. The collective is for these universities. They're taking away money that they normally get for their fundraisers. Of course they want to eliminate them.
You're going to start seeing the collectives, what's left of them, rolled into the traditional fundraising arms at the universities. And I believe what else will happen is, you're right. You can take, to give you an idea, 60 years ago, I think over 60 years, when my dad began to practice architecture, he said there were 11 people on the zoning commission in the city of Memphis. Since then, the population of Memphis has doubled, and there's close to 300 people on the zoning commission. I mean, politics is like someone that's morbidly obese and my 600-pound life. That's what politics. You go from a physically fit guy like, Bruce Jenner back in the day, being the decathlete world champion, greatest athlete in the world, to becoming my 600-pound life. That's what will happen when government gets involved.
Here's the deal.
They have no incentive to save money, and they'll also, Yancey, they'll have to build a new $50 million building to house all these people.
Oh yeah, for your 50 new employees.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but here's the deal. Here's the deal. With the revenue sharing, I talked to somebody and I said, what would that look like? What would the players be getting with the revenue sharing if we went 50-50? Guess what that number came out to? Around $75,000 a player. So there will not be like, you're a quarterback, you get more, you're not as important, you're a punter, so you get 75,000. How do you think these players are going to feel? They're like, we want revenue sharing, let's unionize, let's do this. Oh, well, we just went from making 750,000 to 75,000.
Yeah.
Wait, who talked us into that? No, we don't want that plan anymore.
No. But that's what we've been saying on this show right here all along, and I know, and people who come on the show, like smart people like Yancey, that you could see this months ago.
Oh yeah.
That they're gonna unionize. It's gonna get together. It makes sense for them, so you can see their side of it. Why wouldn't you? And this is the time to do it, right? And they've got plenty of outside forces pushing them together, agents and all that stuff, because then they're gonna get a better deal. Like they're gonna, they're really in the driver's seat in a lot of ways here, and I think that'll be interesting to see how it gets pushed around. And we were talking last night in the Buddy Martin show, and Rob and I are actually guest hosting tonight there. But this conversation was really more about, and I thought your interesting perspective is a little bit more about, the old bag money, let's call it, lack of a better term. I had, a couple of stories last year that, gave me some access behind shadowy doors and shadowy figures. And I got to learn a little bit of how things worked, back then, when, not too long ago, guys were all of a sudden, getting McDonald's bags full of some cash and,
never happened.
Never happened. But, that about how attaching that, because that money still exists. So how does that, and that money's really not been involved in a lot of these collectives, right? So at least around, Florida.
Well, that money's still involved to sign the players. Remember, the players cannot start getting paid until they enroll in classes. So let's say you're a senior in high school, you got 1 year until you graduate, or 1 year until you enroll in that school. You still got to get on the sign. So I've talked to people in the Mafia realm in college athletics, and they say that it's just as prevalent as ever because now you get players getting $50,000 a month, right, at these colleges. What's 50,000, just to commit or sign and cash up front, tax free, because those collectives, they take the tax money out of it. And $50,000 doesn't sound like anything anymore.
No.
And they're making that per month.
Well,
so it's pushed the numbers up of what they used to have to pay to these players just on the cash in. So the money is just
and you guys, and I heard some and this is just off, none of this is verified, but I heard some crazy stories, about like Twitter gangs that get together and they like get money together, right? And then they just start hammering these guys to back to change, to change their mind, a lot of this stuff obviously done digitally. I was like, this is the greatest documentary for me is if you could ever get like a whole story, but there's just a labyrinth of like ways things were done and families who delivered money. And this family, it was mafia, like you said. That was the structure, and it was done by family, and it ran through Valdosta, Georgia, and all the way up, and it was like the old bootleggers highway. But that bags of money are bigger now, and
it's even bigger because
it's Vegas now.
Yeah,
it's
it's not real.
Like Vegas.
It's not real money. You used to give a player say $100,000 cash to sign. That was a lot of money, life changing. But now, when you're making $500,000-$600,000 a year and you get $50,000-$60,000 a month, $100,000 to sign or up front to go ahead and commit, and because you need some money before you actually enroll. I mean, it doesn't really sound like a big deal to the families. It's crazy. I wish I'd have been a lot more athletic and bigger. I'll tell you that.
Well, when you can stop a union too. I mean, I know they look at different companies where pilots have tried to unionize and whatever like that. But what'll happen too is players will start looking at these bigger schools with bigger athletic budgets and saying, I'd rather be there. Hey, let's bring in Rodney Orr. Rodney was a little bit late this morning. He was the Grand Marshal in the Taco Casa Parade in Northport, Alabama this morning. The May Veterinary Clinic, Alabama. Hold on a second. Yeah, Tider Insider Report with Rodney Orr. Tider Insider, it's only $48 a year. You need to be a subscriber and also catch Tuesday nights, 6:30 in the PM Central, live on the YouTube, WVUA TV 23. Rodney Orr and Gary Harris put out great content covering the Crimson Tide. And also, Rodney's got a great book out now, Story of His Life, Bigger Than Bama, the inside story of Tider Insider. It's a definite read. People don't read enough. People love to eat. They love to work out. Why not work out your brain? Read. People judge you by the words you use. Rodney Orr is a wordsmith extraordinaire from Mobile. Spent a little time in Corpus Christi, which translated into English means the body of Christ. And we are blessed to have you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. Sorry for the late arrival. I had grandfather duties this morning, so
never apologize. You are one of the greatest granddads and dads of all time. From everyone I know that knows you down there, is like So I've got 4 kids of my own, got a grandchild, should be due any day. He was supposed to have been here the 24th. Every time I ask my daughter, she goes, "No, he's not here yet." So I'm getting excited.
I bet
Let's
you'll
talk.
you'll know when you find his way.
Oh yeah. Well, let's talk what's going on down there in Tuscaloosa.
I mean, where do you start, Rob? I mean, it never really ends. I mean, it's obviously a lot going on with basketball and the transfer portal, and obviously too with some of the other pickups that Nate Oates has had. He picked up LeBaron Philon, of course, the great player originally from the Mobile area, as a guard here in the portal, that had signed with Kansas and got out of his national letter of intent, originally committed to Auburn, of course.
Yeah,
Great player,
like
6'4".
He's been around, but he
No,
signed in what, 17 or 18? I
no,
think.
no. He's only going to be a true freshman, actually. Now I don't know how old he is, but
Okay.
he's
Wrong one. I was thinking of another one
yeah.
that went to Arkansas. My apologies. Yeah.
Yeah, no. But yeah, he's going to be a true freshman. And then, right now they've obviously picked up Aiden Holloway, the transfer from Auburn last week, point guard. So that's really good. Grant Nelson, of course, everybody knows. Most Alabama fans know this by now. He has announced he's returning. And then they're waiting word from Cliff Omori, who is a Rutgers transfer, 6'11", 240. It's being touted by a lot of schools. Obviously Alabama, North Carolina, Georgetown's been in there, Kansas State. We'll see what he decides. And they're in on some other potential transfers as well. So Nate Oates is really, I think he's done a fantastic job of retooling his roster last year, and he's having to do it a little bit again this year. So right now they look to be in good position. And then, of course, you look at on the other sides, football, and Kalen DeBoer right now has picked up the kicker. I think we talked about him last week, Graham Nicholson. Yeah, we talked about him. We're still kind of going to see, how this unfolds, because they need a couple of offensive tackles, in my opinion, or at least a couple of guys that can play guard and tackle, potentially just to add those numbers up, to bring those numbers up, because Rob, they've only had I think they went through spring practice. Most of spring practice was like 11 or 12 offensive linemen. You need about 16. So that's an area there. And then also corner. Well, they just added a kid yesterday out of Charlotte, Cameron Howard, who's a really versatile player, plays safety, could play corner, could play nickel, has a lot of versatility. So they added him. They probably need another one too. So we'll see. I mean, it's getting late in this portal process. Some guys in the portal. We'll see what happens.
Well, portal ends, I guess, Yancey, doesn't it, tonight at midnight? But if a guy's graduated already, and that's pretty common nowadays, because nobody, the last time someone was declared ineligible, we had a balanced budget in Washington. I think it just doesn't happen anymore. But the portal, did Alabama suffer any losses, Rodney, that concern you in the portal? I don't see it. I mean, other than when initially when Saban left.
Yeah, in this portal period, again, yesterday, Peyton Woodyard, the true freshman, 4-star safety from out in California, he announced he was going into the portal. So I don't know where he's going, West Coast. I don't know if he's officially going to Oregon or not. Somebody mentioned Oregon to me. I haven't been able to check yet this morning to see if that's actually happening, but sounds like he's going to go back to the West Coast. I guess he didn't like, being here. Probably got a big deal, NIL deal as well. So, but I think he's a good player. I think he's a replaceable guy. I mean, he's not Caleb Downs by any stretch, but I mean, so that's really, and that's the thing with this portal. I mean, it's just crazy. A guy comes in, he has a cup of coffee, Julian saying he's gone.
Yeah.
Same thing with Peyton Woodyard, but I'll tell you this, how about, Caden Proctor? I mean, obviously he left, he went back home to Iowa, and he stays a month and says, I made a mistake. He comes back. So, it is what it is. That's kind of the nature of the portal.
Well, he went home for a pork chop. Iowa is the pork capital of the world. Weep. It is a big time deal up there, but he is back, and I don't know. I think he probably got a little bit scared, and then he saw that the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line coach was there, and then didn't he go back to Seattle? So that was probably a little bit different. Jump in here, Yancey.
Yeah, I mean it's come and go as you wish. I think the young man was smart to come back to Alabama. I really do. I think that was a smart move by him, and he'll know the surroundings and be comfortable and get right back in the groove. And there was no bigger get for Alabama than that because as he was just saying, they need two more offensive linemen, and that would be the best one in the market. So that was huge for Bama.
Well, you look at it, in Yancey's right. You say, and you said 12 offensive linemen. You need 16. Alabama's been carrying 18 and 19. Wow, they're so hard to find, guys. I mean, everybody. You got 16 SEC schools got to have a starting five. Rodney, I'll throw it at you first. You really follow recruiting like very few people, and you have relationships with coaches all over. Why are we not developing the offensive linemen like we used to? Is it 7-on-7 camps? Is that the problem?
You know what? I don't really know what the statistics are there in that regard, but or how they're being developed or whatever. I just don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to really comment. All I can say is that, observing Alabama over the last few years, I just think it's, from what I've seen, quality coaching. I mean, are you going to develop players? And there's a general feeling right now that, and I'm not knocking, the guys that have been here. I really like Doug Marrone. He was here for a year. I don't know that he wanted to be necessarily on the college level again. There was a lot of, talk about the last guy that was just here that went back to Kentucky, Coach Wolf. He did a nice job of recruiting, it seems, but I don't know how much better they got. Now, the guy they have it now, Coach Kapolovic from, originally, or was at Michigan State, came here from Baylor. He's a guy that seems to be, everyone seems to think that he's doing a good job of developing these young players that they have. So I just think it's development. I think, and two, Rob, when these guys, now the way it is, if these players aren't satisfied right away, they check out. And they're looking for the next stop. So, it's a real tough challenge for these coaches.
Yancey?
Yeah, and you look at the way it is around the country is most are modeled after the NFL, where you play five until their tongue drops. So, like defensive line, you're rotating three different lines, during the game. So even if you're not a starter, you are still tuned in because you're getting in, 30, 40 snaps. At offensive line, you might be the seven guy on the offensive line and you might get 0 snaps. So it's hard to keep them. Like Dudley said, a lot of them are tuned out because they know they're not going to play.
Yeah, and see, that's what's so hard. That's what's driving the coaches crazy. And I can't imagine there might be an ESPN 30 for 30 or SEC network for sure on Saban's last few weeks recruiting. I think he basically said, I'm tired. I just can't deal with this anymore. Because the big part of offensive linemen, when Nebraska built that powerhouse program, golly, you might spend 3 years in the weight room and not even play it down, but the couple of years you did could have got you a great long NFL career. Rodney, you talk to these coaches. You've got a perspective that's unique, just like Yancey does with Ole Miss, because you have the trust factor. They respect you and they trust you, and you also know what's off the record and what can be said publicly. How frustrated are the coaches now? Or are we just getting the older coaches are checking out and the younger coaches are just rolling with it because kind of that's what they know?
Now, what are we referring to, Rob? The portal?
Just Yeah, with guys just checking out, like coming
Yeah,
in and having a cup of
no,
coffee.
there's a lot of frustration. I mean, I had a top-notch, one of the top high school coaches in the country, honestly, tell me this about a month ago. He said he had a couple of conversations with Nick Saban, 6 months before he stepped down, a year before he stepped down. And Saban kept telling him, our game is, we've lost our game. We don't have it anymore. It's not the same game. And that's what it's all related to. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of frustration. Sure. I mean, like I said, you can't even develop guys. And Yancey made a point, only 5 offensive linemen can play. And generally, coaches stick to those guys. There's not really a rotation. And you know what? The other guys, like I said, they check out when they're not in that 5. Some of these guys check out. Or again, if it's like some other people have said, if the coach coaches them too hard when they first get here and they don't like it, they check out. They want to go back home. They want to go back to California or wherever. So, I mean, it is what it is. You've just given them an out, and it's an easy out for them.
Yeah. And you're seeing now, Yancey, like what Rodney's saying, your roster might have kids from 20 states on it. At Ole Miss, I don't know what it is, but is that fairly close?
Yeah, I mean, Lane's recruiting nationally. I haven't counted the states, but Ole Miss they needed a fourth corner really bad, and they picked up a guy from Michigan, Amorian Walker. He comes in after the first week of practice. He sees that he's going to be the fourth corner and not one of the 2 starting corners. So he says, "My shoulder's hurting." He sits out the rest of the spring, and he's transferring back to Michigan.
Good gosh.
So, I
Oh,
mean,
my goodness.
you spend that time. So now they got to go find that fourth corner again in the portal. So it's it's a lot. It's a lot you got to deal with.
Well, guys, what I think is going to happen to prevent stuff like this from occurring, a guy comes in and just uses you like a beer can and tosses you out the window. They're going to the free market will work this stuff out. We don't have an NCAA anymore, Rodney. I don't give them much longer. But you think about how Augusta National is run. We had this discussion on the show a couple of weeks ago on the Friday, Savant Friday. But Fred Ridley speaks for all of Augusta National. Roger Goodell speaks for all of the NFL. When you have a powerful voice like that, and you know where I'm going, I could see Mike Price being Nick Saban being the commissioner of college football. I think that's where we're probably going to go. You've got to have someone who is passionate, who's been around a while, but at the same time, guys, I think everyone watching will agree, we've never had better attendance. Everyone talks about how great it used to be. Attendance for college football in the 70s, it wasn't even close to what it is now. And season ticket demand, you check the school, guys. I mean, at Alabama, is there any less demand for tickets, even with Nick Saban retiring?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously not. But I mean, also, you go back to the 70s, Rob, and there was 12 or 14,000 students at Alabama. Now you're pushing 40,000.
Exactly.
Times have changed in a lot of different ways. So, the demand is still there, obviously. And it's just, from this perspective anyway. So I haven't heard the exact numbers, but there's no doubt that the demand is still there.
Yeah. Yancey, what are they going to do at Ole Miss, though, with that $350 million football stadium renovation? All that money, was that raised from like donations from private donors, or were they going to float a bond issue via public financing? I would love to sell tax-free municipal bonds on the Vaught Hemingway Stadium at Ole Miss. I would just love it. And I know a lot of my friends in the business would too.
No, it was all private givings. There was going to be no bonds for it.
God.
So That's if there was going to be bonds for it, they would have gone ahead and did it because they wouldn't continue to ask the alumni and battling with the Grove Collective for the NIL money,
Yeah.
asking the same people, "Hey, will you, John, please give us $5,000 for the football expansion?" And then, Walker Jones is calling over there for the Grove Collective, saying, "John, please give us 5,000 for the Grove Collective." Right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was all private givings. They still plan on doing it. It's on hold. And we'll see when they pick it back up. But it needs it. It needs it. Especially the concourses, the underbows, the bathrooms, and things like that. They're going to have to do it. They can't just shelve it forever. So
Yeah.
it'll come back around. They haven't spent the money. They're, hopefully investing it wisely right now and pick back up when things get clarified with the NIL. And
Yeah.
and and they really have because now the state of Mississippi voted that the schools can directly give money to the collectives, can directly work deals with the players. So I would imagine the collective at Ole Miss is nearing the end, so to speak, because the
Yeah.
school will take it over shortly.
Yeah, it is. All right. One more thing, one more question for each of you, and we'll wrap it up. Rodney, the most positive story that you're seeing unfold on campus in Tuscaloosa.
The most positive, again, you know what? I think the crazy thing is just how basketball has kind of stolen the thunder, over the course of the spring and right now, and the job that Nate Oates has done. Obviously, they had the Final Four run. I know Alabama fans think it's at an all-time high in terms of the excitement about the future of the basketball program. So, I would say that's probably right now the thing that's grabbing the most headlines.
Wow, and that is a first that we would say that, but that tells you the strength of your athletic department. Yancey, what's the most positive story you're seeing unfold down in Oxford, Mississippi?
Well, man, obviously it's the football program, but basketball is still in a lot of the limelight right now. They've got 5 top 50 of the players in the transfer portal, which no other school has, and so Beard is he wisely negotiated to double his collective funds for this upcoming team, and he's putting it to good use, and he's getting a lot of high scoring guys. Really, Nate Oates' roster last year is kind of the new wave. He kind of set the standard of let's forget about defense and rebounding and let's go score points. And they picked up 5 guys that all averaged over 15 points a game last year, and they feel like they're going to be much more explosive on offense next year for Beard's team.
Well, I mean, that incredible because the money just keeps on coming. The interest isn't waning. In fact, it's drawing in more people. I love it. Great show today, guys. Thanks so much. Along with Jordan Davis, Hill 24/7 Sports covers Georgia. For executive producer Brendan Martin, the best in the business. Love the comments from Paul Finebaum there early in the show. Please support all of our sponsors. Love our viewers. Let us know what we can do to make a better show. Got another one stacked up for you tomorrow. We are the most blessed country in the history of the world. We most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. Think about what that means, people. If you got a lot, you don't have to give a lot, but you ought to. You can't take it with you. Go out and make great things happen. The only person who can put yourself down is you. Don't let other people tell you how to live your life. Free speech, the First Amendment, is alive and well. We don't cancel people. We let them speak the truth. That's what makes this show work. See you tomorrow, folks. Have a great day.
So important to shop local and to buy American. For 60 years, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company has been on the historic Collierville Square, and we strive to sell made in the USA products when available. With over 7,000 pairs of Western boots and work boots in stock for men and women, come and see our huge selection of clothing, jeans, and accessories from top brands made in the USA. Please support local business and come shop with us at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. God bless the USA.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, The real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Your thoughts about private equity getting involved in the college football playoff with what Derek Dooley said. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that's just part of it, but I think ultimately private equity will be all over college football because it's, private equity goes where you can make money, and there's a lot of money to be made. I've talked to people that really believe the sport is vastly undervalued.
Another one, ESPN's taking that spot, iconic spot that CBS had. Who are the announcers going to be, and how much different do you expect it to be? What's your role going to be?
Well, I think the announcers are going to be the same. I mean, you still have the Fowler, Herb Street crew will do not always the prime game. My job's not going to really be any different. We'll still do the SEC morning show, but it's just from a day-to-day standpoint, it will be different because Texas and Oklahoma. And on July 1st, when it becomes official, we'll be out in Austin one day and Norman the next.
Okay. What are your thoughts, too, about Oklahoma and Texas coming in? Is it true there's going to be a billboard on I-20 that's all orange and white? Texas, in the bottom right-hand corner, welcomes the SEC. It's going to be that
having been to both places recently, there's tremendous excitement. I think it's one of the most exciting things that's ever happened to the SEC.
And as far as the rest of the league right now, the Ole Miss factor, they have not been the hunted before. They've always been hunting. Kind of talk about that. Lane Kiffin was the one coach who really challenged Nick Saban to change, saying he wanted to beat him so badly. I think people are going to miss Nick Saban more than they realize. A lot of people may want him gone.
Yeah, no, listen, he's obviously the most important coach in the league since Bear Bryant, and maybe the greatest coach of all time. So I don't say that really with much doubt. But yeah, he will, and he left at a high standard. It's not like the guy had 4 losing seasons. He almost made it to the national championship game.
One last one. As far as the SEC and the Big Ten at 65, do you see that happening soon? That we go to just 4 super conferences?
Yeah, we're definitely moving toward super conferences. But I think the real place to keep your eye on is the ACC. Can it hold together? If it can't,